Hello, I'm the pageant nerd and thanks for checking out my latest video about my favourite pageant, Miss Universe. Today I'm both looking ahead and looking back. Looking ahead to the 72nd Miss Universe competition scheduled for later this year in El Salvador. It's a little early for a predictions video, so I'm mainly looking back for my fellow pageant history buffs to the last time this small Central American nation hosted the pageant. Yes, El Salvador will become the 7th country with multiple hosting duties, as you can see on this chart. During the most recent Miss Universe in New Orleans on January 14, El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, made the surprise announcement that his country would host Miss Universe 2023. The 42-year-old president, who helped El Salvador become the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency, just misses the top 10 list of youngest state leaders in the world today. He's so young that he wasn't even born when his country staged Miss Universe in 1975. Miss Universe was held outside mainland USA for the first time just 3 years earlier in Dorado, Puerto Rico for the 1972 pageant. It then travelled to Athens, Greece in 1973 and Manila, Philippines in 1974, making El Salvador the first Central American host nation. Panama would become the second 11 years later.
The capital of El Salvador in Central America, the Miss Universe Beauty Pageant. Tonight on the stage of the magnificent Gimnasio Nacional, 71 contestants from 71 countries around the globe.
The 24th Miss Universe was held on July 19, 1975 after a 16-day pageant. Just a few days earlier, the American Apollo and Russian Soyuz spacecrafts docked in orbit, the first such link-up of spacecraft of the two nations. Something tells me that won't be happening again anytime soon. El Salvador was gripped by political and economic turmoil at the time, and student protests against the $1 million cost of hosting the pageant turned deadly. 4 years later, civil war erupted in the country and was only quelled in 1992. The pageant was hosted by Bob Barker for the 9th consecutive year, with Helen O'Connell providing colour commentary for a 4th year. Helen would last appear in 1980, while Bob had his own incredible streak of 21. His last hosting duties were performed in 1987. The pageant was staged at the 12,500-seat Gimnasio Nacional, or National Gymnasium, in San Salvador. Watching the pageant again recently, I was reminded of the size of the stage. It was absolutely humongous, surely one of the largest in Miss Universe history, and dwarfing some of the stages we've seen since then. Apparently, air conditioning was either non-existent or insufficient, with audience members constantly fanning themselves throughout the telecast. 71 nations competed, and during the Parade of Nations, we saw the delegates introduce themselves on stage after they handed over their vote for Miss Unity, or Miss Amity, or Miss Congeniality, as it's since been called. The ballots were tallied live on stage, with Miss Trinidad and Tobago taking the prize. 1975 was actually the final year this on-stage voting process took place. There was a rare tie for Miss Photogenic, with Colombia and USA sharing the prize. Guatemala won Best National Costume for the first and so far only time. We saw the debut of 4 nations: Belize, Mauritius, Micronesia, and American Samoa, or Samoa as it was called at the pageant. Micronesia would be represented by Northern Marianas the following year, and every year until 1999, and most recently in 2006. We also saw the likes of Liberia and Luxembourg compete, both of which haven't competed at Miss Universe in many years. Morocco too, though it made its return in 2021. England, Scotland and Wales now compete as Great Britain, and Yugoslavia has been split up, now represented at times by Croatia, Serbia, Kosovo, Slovenia and Montenegro. Unlike in later years, the swimsuit fashion show was ordered by continent and in alphabetical order within each region. I really enjoyed this segment of the telecast from that era, which was discontinued after the 1989 pageant. It was a great way to showcase the host nation and give another chance for the delegates to shine. The geographic allocations were problematic, as they have been in other editions. Asia and the Far East were oddly in separate groups, largely reflecting an American view of the world. As an aside, 1989 was one of the worst offending years for geographic ignorance and inaccuracies, when Nordic and European country Iceland was magically relocated to North America, and the Islands group emerged, clumping queens from the Caribbean Sea and Pacific, Indian and Atlantic Oceans in one super region, just because they were small island nations. Or like in 1990, when Czechoslovakia, Poland and Soviet Union were separated from the rest of Europe. Or more recently, when Asian nations, Armenia and Kazakhstan, were placed in Europe to even out the regional groups. But I digress. Anyway, 12 semi-finalists were announced and, spoiler alert, the eventual top two were the first two called. Eventual first runner-up Haiti, followed by the eventual winner, Finland. The huge stage meant the accompanying musical snippets had run out by the time most of the queens reached their mark on stage. Host nation El Salvador placed for the first time in 20 years. The then president of El Salvador, Arturo Armando Molina, was present, and when El Salvador was called to the semi-finals, a shot of him applauding was shown on screen. El Salvador's only previous placement was a first runner-up finish 20 years earlier in 1955. And in a curious case of symmetry, it would be another 20 years for El Salvador's third placement in 1995. They did, however, make the semis again the following year, but have failed to do so since then. In the finals night competition, there were no computer scores shown on screen. We were 3 years away from the debut of televised judges' scores, while 2023 marks the return of on-screen scores after a 13-year absence. On to the first semi-final competition, interviews, and there were no interpreters available during this round, leading to some very quick chats, many awkward moments and some patchy translating by host and part-time Spanish speaker Bob Barker himself.
You take shorthand and you type.
I don't understand.
Yes, máquina de escribir.
Yes.
Sí, yes. And I know Omaha, Nebraska is enjoying these interviews. What is my name?
My name is
My name.
Sachiko Nakayama.
No, you.
Poor Miss Japan. She didn't stand a chance of doing well in this round. Miss Philippines revealed she was an usher during the previous year's pageant in Manila.
Well, I was thinking I dreamt of being in the contest, but I never expected of being here.
Miss El Salvador showed her warmth and intelligence speaking in both Spanish and English, having studied in the United States.
Also, I want to say to the people from Lancaster, United States, that I also love them very much.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where you went to school. Thank you, Miss El Salvador.
The swimsuit semis were a pretty quick affair, with the parade of each queen being relatively short, and I could only find versions of it on YouTube with the final 6 of the top 12 semi-finalists.
You've already met Luz Marina de Vélez, Miss Universe of 1958, who was one of this year's judges. And
We were introduced to 4 previous title holders in the audience. Miss Universe from 1957, Peru's Gladys Zenda, 1962's Norma Nolan from Argentina, 1964's Karina Sope from Greece, and Kerry-Ann Wells, Miss Universe 1972 from Australia, who would reappear later on that night. Evening gowns was a similarly quick affair, with the queens lining up for their brief moment in the spotlight. White was a very popular colour. A little oddly, straight after that round, the top 12 all posed one more time for the judges in their gowns, proving it was very much a beauty pageant back then, and largely focused on aesthetics and not personality or intelligence, let alone any philanthropic or charitable activity. In the all-important top 5 announcement, the first 3 countries called were in their final order: Finland, Haiti, and USA. And something I found rather interesting at this point, interpreters magically appeared for the final question. Why weren't they used in the semi-final interviews? Having spoken English earlier in the competition, Miss Haiti gave a solid answer here in French. Miss Philippines completely bombed when asked who she would attribute her success to should she win. She said the judges. 17-year-old Miss Sweden, who was very popular with the San Salvador crowd, said she'd take the president of El Salvador to check out the coastal parts of her hometown. Miss USA said the most fun she had in El Salvador was all the dancing she did. Miss Finland said choosing the winner should be based on talking to the contestants, personality being most important. Kind of ironic, given it seemed this was apparently low on the judges' criteria for Miss Universe in the 1970s.
I think I would have seen the most important qualities when talking to the girl. The personality, of course, is very, very important, and the way the personality and outlook fits together.
On to the crowning, and the 2 most recent Miss El Salvadors were featured, bringing out the Miss Universe crown and a gift of jewellery from the president of El Salvador. This was somewhat unique because Miss Universe 1975 wasn't crowned by her successor, after Spain's Amparo Muñoz gave up her 1974 title halfway through her reign, and she wasn't replaced. Back to that shortly. Miss Philippines was announced as 4th runner-up, and when Miss Sweden was called as 3rd runner-up, the crowd voiced its displeasure with boos and whistles. After the USA, Summer Bartholomew was named 2nd runner-up, we had Haiti and Finland the last 2 standing. For the 2nd time in 8 years, we nearly had our first black Miss Universe, after Curaçao also finished 1st runner-up in 1968. Just 2 years later, in 1977, the first black Miss Universe was finally crowned, Janelle Commission of Trinidad and Tobago. That was Haiti's 2nd ever placement at Miss Universe, and their next one wouldn't come until 2016, another 1st runner-up result.
The first runner-up is Miss Haiti. Miss Finland is Miss Universe.
Miss Universe 1972 Kerry Ann Wells crowned the 1975 Queen, 19-year-old model Anne-Marie Potamo of Finland. Kerry Ann also read the Miss Universe Creed, a tradition typically carried out by the outgoing title holder, which was last performed in 1990 by Miss Universe 1989 Angela Visser. 1974 was a turbulent year in pageantry as neither Alpha Pageant title holder completed their reigns. After Amparo Muñoz gave up her Miss Universe crown, Welsh woman Helen Morgan, Muñoz's 1st runner-up in Manila, gave up the Miss World crown she won later in 1974 after just 4 days. I cover this controversy in another of my videos. Click the link in the corner. Coincidentally, Kerry Ann Wells wasn't crowned by her predecessor either. Miss Universe 1971 Georgina Risk of Lebanon was prevented from attending Miss Universe 1972 for fears of a terrorist attack, as was the reigning Miss Lebanon. There'd been a massacre of 17 Puerto Rican pilgrims on Israeli soil by Palestinians just 2 months earlier. Lots of political upheaval affecting pageantry back then. We'll see if there's a similar situation later this year, should the Russia-Ukraine conflict be ongoing. Regardless, I'm personally excited to have Miss Universe travel to an exotic location like El Salvador. From the 1970s to early 2000s, we were blessed with the pageant being hosted in a wide variety of countries. But that changed in 2010 when Las Vegas started to become a semi-regular default as seemingly interest in hosting the pageant waned. Miss Universe's new owners, while creating waves with some of their other actions, seem to have placed an impressive focus on taking the pageant global again. Of course, let's see how often Thailand ends up hosting in subsequent years. Alright, that's a wrap on my look back at El Salvador's first hosting of Miss Universe way back in 1975, as it gears up to host Miss Universe 2023. As always, if you enjoyed this clip, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and hitting super thanks if you're in a position to support this channel. Thanks for watching and look after yourselves. This is the Pageant Nerd. Bye for now.